Hi, everyone. Welcome on board. Today we are speaking about a very interesting topic. Its name is how to make your web UI in Java fancy. And my name is Victor. I'm the product manager of Jmix, and my co-host today is Gleb Gorelov. Shake your hand. Yeah, here you are. Gleb is the team lead of the Jmix framework, and he will be the main hero of our today's webinar. Yeah, don't be
Hello,
surprised.
everyone.
That's great. Yeah, and just want to ask whether the voice and the picture is okay. Please write something in the chat like plus or heart or flame or something like this if everything is okay. This will be very useful for us to understand that we are running good. And while we are waiting for your feedback, we'll start slightly with Gleb. Mm, yeah. And my first question, Gleb, for you today is, how long are you already in UI development?
Well, it's almost 10 years, I would say. Yeah, almost 10 years.
Wow, 10 years. It's the age of a small child, yeah? Okay, then. And how long are you already with Vaadin?
Actually, the same 10 years, because since I joined the platform, I have been working on UI functionality of the framework. So since then, I'm working with Vaadin.
So 10 years working tight with this technology. That sounds great. And it seems that 10 years ago, was it Vaadin 6?
Starting with Vaadin 6, not 7, 8, and then Vaadin Flow.
That's great. That's great. So it's a historical path. And can you describe how do you evaluate the evolution of Vaadin since then?
Well,
Difficult, yeah.
yeah, it's difficult because I can say that Vaadin always tries to follow the current needs of developers. For example, the classic, let's say classic, yeah, same naming as for Jmix, classic versions of Vaadin, they provide API for UI components similar to Swing, desktop development,
Desktop
And
development. Well, okay.
yeah, and more importantly, they have created a layout system similar to that of Swing. So making it easier to switch between from development of desktop application to web applications, because you almost have the same API and the same layouting. So it's easier to you to understand how it will look like. And
I've read that it's something like mental map. Yeah, so you just can project your experience from
yeah,
one
yeah,
technology
yeah.
to another.
The same naming for UI components, the same, not the same, similar naming, similar
Well,
API. And actually, this is one of the reasons why in Cuba platform, we were able to generate two UI modules simultaneously, web and desktop, from a single set of screen source code. Because just had this GUI module, XML plus Java controllers, and we generated two UIs, desktop and web, because we wrapped both Vaadin and Swing components, providing the same API for UI components, for screens and stuff like that, and just rendered them differently. And that was an easy task, actually.
Yeah, understood. So you delivered both parts of
Yeah. And since time has passed, Vaadin released Vaadin Flow, which where they has adapted to modern web development trends. So they always try to fulfill needs of Java developers, considering current trends. Swing before, modern UI, modern web UI nowadays.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Definitely. 10 years, it's a huge period of working with this technology. It seems that you love it. And can you say, why do you love working with Vaadin?
Because I have no other choice.
That's an honest answer. Yeah.
Because when I joined, Cuba and Jmix, they already used Vaadin, so I have no choice. Just
Yeah,
to love it.
straightforward. Straightforward.
Sorry.
That's great. That's great. But it would be easier to step into our today's webinar, and
Yeah.
I deliver the words to Gleb. Please launch your presentation, and I think that we have a lot of things to show to the audience today. If you will have questions during the webinar, please write them immediately in the chat, and we'll try to answer them. So I'm shutting down. Gleb, please.
Thank you. Okay. And I want to start with the question, since we started to talk about Vaadin, what advantages has Jmix Flow UI over pure Vaadin? And well, the answer is from the UI perspective, it's nothing, because we use Vaadin to build our user interface. And we simply adding missing UI components and add required API for our needs, like data binding and stuff like that. So I cannot say that we better or stuff like this. So we just use them. But another question, what advantages has Jmix Flow UI over Jmix Classic UI? And here we have something to discuss. First of all, Web Components is used instead of Google Web Toolkit on the client side. So all the time that Vaadin is familiar to a wide audience, the client side of the Vaadin framework has been inseparably connected to another well-known product called Google Web Toolkit. And this combination enables users to write UI components and server API using the same language, Java, which is, well, is rather convenient. And last years, Google Web Toolkit was not growing and began to stagnate. And during this period of stagnation, an important event happened. The new web component specification and another web framework from Google, Polymer, appeared. And apparently, this was the beginning of the end for Google Web Toolkit. And mention this stagnation, the Vaadin team made a tough decision to completely abandon development on Google Web Toolkit and rewrite the client side of their framework using web components and Polymer. So what exactly is web components? Web components is a set of standards. It was offered and actively promoted by Google, but the initiative has already been supported by Mozilla. And in fact, these are technologies for creating web UI components so that they support behavior and representation encapsulation. So the main advantage is usability. Another thing here is easier interaction with the client-side part of the components. So each UI component is rendered into a certain HTML code. And in the classic UI, there is no easy way to add or modify HTML attributes of an element. So you need to create a Java API, send changes to the client-side widget written in Google Web Toolkit, and only then you have an API to interact with the HTML element. And contrastingly, Vaadin Flow and Jmix Flow provide an element API which represents an element in the DOM. So you can change it directly from Java code easily. Next thing is support for modern CSS features. So we are no longer limited by the old compiler from SCSS code into CSS. So we're also not limited by CSS features supported by Internet Explorer anymore. And the whole world of CSS is at our feet, finally. And the last one, but not the least one, is easy integration of JavaScript libraries. So in Classic UI, we can only integrate regular JavaScript libraries by placing them inside the project or importing them by direct URL. In Flow UI, we can integrate both regular JavaScript libraries, web components, and starting with Vaadin 24.4 and Jmix 2.4, React components are also available for integration. Also, we can use npm dependencies to add dependencies to some JavaScript library. Okay. So in today's workshop, we are going to explore some specific aspects of styling and layout that brings to us Jmix Flow UI. And for today's workshop, I've prepared a small application. So let's take a look at it. It's already started. So it's just a simple sample sales application, our classic demo application. It has customers, products, orders, and order lines. Simple like this. And let's start by changing the theme colors. For example, I want to change the default primary color from blue, yeah, like this, to something else, and the background color from white to darker shade, for example. So let's go to our application, and I'll go to my theme source code and open sales.css. I see that here the place to define my own styles, and changing the background color shouldn't be difficult. In fact, we can do, for example, the following: HTML background color and something like F4, F5, 7. So we can probably see that it's a darker shade. And if I go back to my application, I see that it works, and my background now changed its color. But how can we change the primary color? So obviously, I cannot style each button and any other component individually. I need a global approach for this. And default look and feel of Vaadin components comes from the built-in theme called Luma. It is based on a set of customizable style properties, as known as CSS custom properties, representing colors, fonts, sizes, and other styles. And they can be customized by providing new values for them in a CSS style sheet, either globally or scoped to a certain component type or instance. And you can read about available CSS variables in the Vaadin documentation. For example, if I go to this link, here Vaadin documentation with like general information about style properties and separated by their purpose. For example, if we go to the color, you can see available properties for each color used in the Vaadin application. For example, for primary, for error, warning, success, text, stuff like that. So feel free to investigate this documentation. Additionally, I would like to introduce you to a versatile tool that allows you to experiment with various Luma features, the Luma Theme Editor. So let's open it. Let me remember. Editor Pro. Font size, let's make it like 15 probably. Or even 16. Okay, we will adjust later if needed. Let's start with 16. All right, thank you. And going back to the Luma theme editor, here you can see available CSS variables for colors, typography, style, sizes, spaces, and stuff like that. Unfortunately, this tool is a bit outdated, so there are no newly added CSS variables for the components, but at least we can change the application properties. For example, let's change the primary color. So if I click just to this primary color button, I can change its value and let it be, for example, C3 and D5. So you can see that the preview has changed immediately. So I'm not only changing it, but also can see the result of my changes. And let's click the download button. After we click it, the download button, the editor generates the styles that we needed to add to our project. Actually, ignore this description, ignore this custom style tag. All this is suitable for Vaadin Healer. The code we are interested in is inside this style tag. So actually, one of the reasons why I like this tool is that it generates values for related variables. For example, in case of the primary color, it also generates values for 15% opacity, 10% opacity, and for text color. Let's copy these values. I won't copy other code because I already have HTML tag. So just put it here. Going back to our application. So we can see that I've changed globally my primary color. And while it's possible to hardcode values like we did for the background color, it's generally best to use CSS variables, especially if you plan to reuse a value. That is why let's create a custom CSS variable for this value. Let's name it secondary base color. Actually, and secondary base color. Nothing will change, but I can reuse this value later. Okay, let's proceed and let's talk about styling UI components. So in the slide, you can see the DOM tree of the text field component. And UI components provide additional features, for example, label, helper text, error message, tooltip, and so on, which makes them more complex than native HTML elements. They also utilize an HTML feature called shadow DOM. You can see it in the slide here, which encapsulates their internal HTML structure and isolates it from the page's global CSS. And because of this, UI components cannot be styled using native HTML element selectors like input, button, and instead, each component exposes a number of parts and states that can be used as selectors in CSS blocks. For example, there are several primary types of parts, each of which is associated with a different type of CSS selector. Root elements, so each UI component has a root HTML element whose name starts with the Vaadin or Jmix prefix, such as Vaadin button or Jmix value picker, for example. Shadow parts are elements inside the component's shadow DOM and are styled using part selector, like this part selector. And for example, if we want to apply background color and a border to a text field, we need to apply styles to a shadow part called input field, as we can see in the slide. And the last one is regular child elements. Regular or light DOM HTML child elements are styled using so-called child combinator selector, or this actually angle bracket. For example, a label element of a text field component can be styled as follows. And I believe that after that, the question arises, how do I know if I need to style a root element, a shadow part, or a child element? Well, first of all, you can investigate the structure of the component in the browser's developer tools, like we can see in the slide, and investigate what is located inside its shadow root, what is outside, and stuff like that. Or we can go to the Vaadin documentation because for each component, there is a styling section. Let's, for example, take a look at the buttons styling section in the Vaadin documentation. So let's start with CSS selectors. And for example, here is an example of different CSS selectors that can be used in style sheets to target various parts and states of a button component. For example, disabled button, focused label part, icon, different theme variants like primary, icon, small, large, whatever. Another thing here, so since Vaadin 24.3, CSS variables can be used to customize the appearance of components. So for example, to change a button's background color, instead of targeting the root element, we can change the value of the corresponding Vaadin button background property. And let's try it out. So let's go to application and notice that after we changed the background color, regular buttons like edit, remove, cancel became less noticeable. That's to say, less contrast. Let's fix it. And to fix it, we will use corresponding CSS variables. So let me copy this and let it be Luma base color. And another thing, Vaadin button text color. Thank you. Will be Luma body text color. As you can see, I don't hard code these values. I just know that there are Luma base color and Luma body text color. Sorry. So I use them in order to make my buttons look the same in all places. I mean, if I change these variables, my buttons will change accordingly. So I don't need to find all places that they are hard-coded these values. Let's go back to our application, and we can see that my buttons are white now, and the text is changed to like something similar to black color. And actually, I like it. I like it better this way because they are contrasting now to the background. Okay, another question. What about styling individual components? So in case you need to apply styles for specific component instances, the class names attribute can be used. For example, we implement a style that applies to the input field part of the text field component if it has bordered class, CSS class name. And then we can use this CSS class name in XML and in Java, actually. So let's try to style individual components in our application. Let's go back to our application and take a look at the fields. So as with buttons before, they lack contrast against the background. And instead of changing the background color of fields, I want to wrap them in a contrasting panel. So let's create a CSS class that changes the background color and adds border radius property to any component that uses this class. Okay, let's go back to our application and let's name it contrast panel. Background color will be same Luma base color because I know that it is white, and border radius will be Luma border radius M. And now let's open our is it? Yes, it is order detail view. Let's open order detail view to start with, and probably let's close this. Okay, what I have here? I have form layout. I have data grid. So let's wrap into VBox form layout like this, and let's give it ID, for example, form wrapper, and class names our contrast panel. Copy, and let's another wrapper data grid wrapper class names like this, and since details action is already a container, let's just add class names contrasting panel here. And well, actually, I know that horizontal layout HBox has auto width by default. So I want to add width 100%. And actually, I know that it doesn't have paddings by default. Let's add one just to make it prettier for us. Let's refresh our page. Contrast. Sorry. My bad. Contrast. 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 Wrong naming. Yeah, I like it better this way. So we now have kind of logical structure inside our view. Fields, data grid, buttons panel, but take a look at the cancel, edit, and remove buttons. Let's like this. So they blend into the background. Let's fix it. What we can do? We can go back to our styles, and I copy this Vaadin buttons background variable, and its value will be secondary base color. So I can reuse my variable. Let's go back. Okay, better now. So they now contrasting to the background. And another thing to notice here is data grid. Previously, it occupied the entire space, but since we wrapped it in a container, it no longer does so. Let's quickly fix it, and then we will talk about layout specifics and why it happened. So I go back to my order detail view and expand data grid wrapper. Let's refresh the page. Okay, now I'm happy. Let's go back to our presentation. So usually UI components are placed inside HBox or VBox containers, horizontal layout, vertical layout. And you probably noticed attributes like align items, justify content, align self, instead of a single align as in the classic UI. And this is because these containers are Flexbox containers. And the flexible box layout module, usually referred to as Flexbox, is a one-dimensional layout model that aims at providing a more efficient way to layout, align, and distribute space among items in a container, even when their size is unknown and or dynamic. So thus the word flex. And the main idea behind the flex layout is to give the container the ability to alter its items width and height and order to best fill the available space, mostly to accommodate to all kind of display devices and screen sizes, this responsive stuff. And Flex container expands items to fill available free space or shrinks them to prevent overflow, for example. I won't describe all the Flexbox properties and their possible values, as that would take too long. our webinar. Actually, you can find out them in our documentation, the layout rules section, link below in the description. And it is important to note that Flexbox is an industry standard for creating web pages right now. And understanding Flexbox is the key to understanding layouts in Jmix. Okay, well, let's go to our application. And what exactly happens when we wrap a data grid in a container? By default, data grid's FlexGrow CSS property is set to 1, meaning that it should expand if possible in the Flexbox containers. And since the root layout element is a vertical layout VBox, with a default width and height of 100%, the data grid expands within it, like in the list views. If you go to any list view XML, you won't see that data grid is expanded. It expands by default because of FlexGrow property. And when wrapping it in another container with an outer height, we need to expand that container as well, because data grid expanded inside it, but we need to expand this new container, new wrappings around it. Okay, let's continue with some practice, I suppose. And I want to do something like this, create new order and so like this. Nice. Okay, pay attention that error messages, these ones, increase the view layout height. And the detail actions box may be positioned outside the window, like I did. And if there is not enough space to display all nested components, scroll bar appear, obviously. So let's fill values like this. So now you can see that error messages disappear and the view layout height is decreased, so we can see details actions box. Again, it depends on device screen size. I just needed to shrink my browser to show it. But what if we have more fields on the view or a smaller screen? We will need to scroll down every time we want to save or close our view. For example, let's shrink it even more. To close or save, I need to scroll down. Let's adjust this because I want this details actions box to be always visible, some kind of fixed footer. So let's go back to our code and how it can be implemented. Actually, very easy. Let's wrap everything except details action with another VBox like this. Let's give it name, for example, ID, not name, content box and CSS overflow auto, expand data grid wrapper and padding false. Padding false because I know that VBox has default paddings. I don't want ugly UI, so I need to remove it. About overflow we'll talk a little bit later. What else? Actually, let's expand this content box. Actually, we could wrap everything in a scroller component instead of VBox. But scroller can only have one nested component, so we still need a VBox wrapper for it. So thus, it's easier to add a scroll bar via CSS like this. So as you can see, I don't even need to create a custom CSS class for this. I can just write CSS properties in the CSS attribute well, it's easy and it's fast in case for a single or couple of CSS properties. Okay, now, before we proceed, one more thing. Align items, stretch, and I can remove width 100%. Let's make sure that everything works, and then we will talk about align items. So I refresh the page, and let's shrink. Yeah, as you can see, I have fixed footer in my view. So I don't need to scroll down if I need to close my view and well, scroll, we can see it for the content of our view. Good. Pay attention that even though I removed width 100% for detail sections, it still has it. So takes the entire width. It's because I have defined align item stretch for the for the root layout, which means that it expands its items among the cross axis. Horizontally in this case, it's Flexbox stuff. You can read about it in our documentation, link down below. Okay, but I don't really like what I have right now because since this actions panel, buttons panel is fixed, I don't like that it has margins around it. Let's make it look better, in my opinion, for me. Okay, what I'm going to do. First of all, well, before we proceed, one more thing. As you can see, it also has paddings after scroll bar, which also is ugly. That's why I remove paddings for the root layout. I also remove spacing for it. I'm adding back paddings for the content wrapper. And I also don't want this buttons panel to be white and having border radius because, well, without paddings around it, it doesn't make sense. That's why I'm going to write the following strange symbols like PXM, PYS, BG contrast 5. And I'm removing padding. So pay attention to the CSS classes that I used, this PX, PY, BG contrast. This Luma utility classes. Luma utility classes are predefined CSS class names and style sheets similar to the popular Tailwind CSS library. They can be used to style HTML elements and layouts without having to write CSS, like typical styles that we want to apply. In this case, I'm applying horizontal padding, middle size, vertical padding, small, and background color equal to contrast 5%. So each utility class applies a particular style to the element, such as background color again, borders, font, sizing, spacing, and also it provides classes for applying Flexbox and grid layout features. How can we find actual values, names, and stuff like that? We can open Luma utility Java. It's Java class with just constants or different typical CSS properties. For example, background. Here, my BG contrast 5% for padding. Yeah. Non, small, small, medium, stuff like that. So you can use it both in Java and in XML, which is rather convenient. Let's check if everything is correct and works as intended. Yes. Probably not the best color for the background, but at least no additional paddings. And well, scroll bar also doesn't have padding right to it. Okay. Let's see what else we can do with our application. For example, let's open customers detail view. I see here a lot of fields, but if we take a closer look, you can notice that some of them contain customer personal information like first name, last name, email, and some are their address, street, city, so on. So let's use our contrast panel to group the fields. So let's open, close this, open customer detail view, and let's make it two form layouts. This one will contain like address form. This one personal information form, and we don't need this fields. Let's wrap it inside VBox one. Class name contrast panel information. Sorry. The same for this form layout. And let's add like headers. For example, H5 text personal information. I like this Studio feature that I don't need to write it from scratch. And here, well, actually, I know that address is an embeddable entity, and entity has its own caption. So I won't create a new message key. I just reuse caption of an entity itself. Address like this, and put slash here and message. So I can see that Studio sees this actual value. Awesome. And the same for details section. Width 100%, padding true. True. Thank you. Let's refresh. Well, looks better. But I'm not happy. I want the group of fields placed horizontally, and not one column. I want it horizontally. And the first thing that comes to mind is to place the forms inside horizontal layout. Let's try it out. So let's make it H box. I add additional empty lines just to make it more readable, just in case. And it's 100%. Let's. Okay, looking good, but let's try to shrink our browser. This solution isn't responsible. Too bad. Okay, how we can make it responsive? Not responsive, responsive. Yeah, sorry. Well, I guess that the answer is form layout, as we do with regular fields. Let's change it to form layout. Form layout. Refresh the page, and let's try to shrink. Okay, it's responsive now, but I'm still not happy with the solution, because if you take a closer look, you can see that these columns has different height, and this is because form layout. This is because form layout is called form layout. It's not column layout. This UI component is intended to display fields because it has like role span attributes, and each component, each form item inside it can only have out height. We cannot change it. Even if we explicitly set height 100%, that won't work, unfortunately. So we need to come up with a solution that meets all our needs, or all my needs at least. And actually, I have a couple of ideas, but we are going to use another popular CSS layout module called grid. CSS grid layout is known as grid or CSS grid, is a two-dimensional grid-based layout system. And grids can be used to lay out major page areas or small user interface elements. So let's replace our form layout with the following. Just a simple div. Let's give it a class name grid panel. And let's implement this grid panel. So display grid width 100%. To add like spacing between columns, we can use grid gap attribute and let it be luma space m. And actually the main magic is going to be in the grid template columns. Repeat auto fit min max, and here 25 actually rem and 1fr. So as I said, the main magic is defined by the grid template columns property. Sorry. In our implementation, it creates a two-column grid that is converted into one column if width is less than 25 rem value. Let's check how it works. So let's refresh the page. So I see that my columns now have the same width. Let's check if it's responsive. Yeah. And what also comparing with form layout solution, it has this gap even when we have one column. So it applies both vertically, horizontally. Well, I'm happy with the result right now. Okay, and but actually, we have seen that using styles, we can not only color UI components, but also solve everyday tasks of placing components on the screen, because even ordinary attributes of containers or components are actually transformed into the corresponding CSS properties or HTML attributes. And if you want to learn more about developing user interfaces for Jmix applications, as well as other advanced topics, please join our online course starting at November 11th. And the registration form and educational program can be found using this QR code. Feel free to scan it and join our online course. And actually, that's it for today's webinar. For my part, I tried to show you some specifics, and I hope you like them.
Okay, that was really great. All the time I watched the workshop today, I've kept my fingers crossed that you won't start typing JavaScript. Yeah,
No,
at
no,
least you
no.
made everything with CSS, these wonderful things. Sometimes it looks like magic. Really amazing. But do I understand you? I mean, do I understand you correct? So that means that working with all Jmix Flow UI features, we need to master CSS styles professionally. Yeah.
Uh, it will help you a lot. Because, I mean, you don't need, but you can if you want to make really great UIs because it's now the standard. Previously, it was Swing, it was like typical attributes, align, stuff like that. But now, web applications, web development is very, very popular, and it's hard to write UIs even in Java without knowing CSS because at least we need to make our application responsive. And
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that, better understanding of Java will help you a lot. Because, for example, uh, when creating this version of responsive to columns grid, I didn't use like media queries because media queries checks the width of the browser window. But probably you noticed that, for example, here I have one column for each column doesn't sound great, but if I make my view bigger by collapsing side menu, it's again two columns per column because it checks the size of its container, not the whole browser window. And well, it also requires to you to understand how to implement size changes depending on the
Mm-hmm.
actual container
Mm-hmm.
width. So
Mm-hmm.
this
Well,
is
fine.
industrial standard for right now to understand CSS features because every application now
Mm-hmm.
in the browser.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And before I ask you the last question, we've got some questions from the YouTube channel, from the YouTube chat. By the way, don't forget to put your likes, yeah, on the video because they're important for us to
Like,
grow the
subscribe,
audience.
comment down below.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, and we'll go on. We've got a question from edX Lab, and he asks how to make all buttons of the application non-flat.
Uh,
What would you recommend
to
in
style web
this case?
button. To style
Yeah,
web button.
well.
Actually, we do this in the training. On our UI training, we make buttons like round and with bevel, like bevel. Let's open Luma theme editor, and if we go to style, button style, border, and gradient, it will generate for us styles to make buttons non-flat. We can click download, see require styles to add. But this is bad styles. In training, we have a correct version. Sorry. It's just, I mean, it is possible with styling doing something like this, but in trainings we show a shorter version. And because, again, as I mentioned before, this tool is a little bit outdated. This styles works obviously because we see in the preview, but it uses like shadow DOM styling, which is quite complicated. In the trainings, we show how to make it from light DOM. It's easier.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gleb, for that. We have one more question related to Jmix reports. I guess this is not the core question of our today's webinar. One question regarding the transition from Cuba 7 to Jmix. Well, okay. By the way, how much time did it take for you to move from the Cuba UI design development to Jmix Flow? How much time did you need?
What do you mean? How much time we
To go into a new technology to the updated one?
to me to learn or
To
how
learn,
we
to learn.
re-implemented Jmix?
To learn,
Yeah.
to get acquainted with the technology, I mean.
It's hard to answer because well, speaking about styling, working with UI features, I always like worked with CSS. Sometimes it's JavaScript, and so I had the background. That's why probably for me it's easier. But
Much easier. Yeah,
much
okay.
easier. But in terms of internal implementation of UI components, especially client side, in terms of using UI components, same Java classes, same buttons, same text fields, a couple new attributes.
It looks almost the same, yeah?
Yeah. So
That's great.
approach is the same.
Okay.
Internals, well, I had a background for that.
That's great. That's great. We've got a new question related to UI in the chat. Is there a way to display the Excel file as Vaadin has support for it? Spreadsheet comes on the table.
Well, Vaadin provides paid component to display Excel-like files.
And
For your money, everything is possible.
that's great. That's great.
Obviously, we cannot integrate it to Jmix because, we cannot pay it to Vaadin. Yeah.
Yet.
You pay to us, we pay to Vaadin.
Yet.
So
Yet we cannot do that.
license problems, but you can buy it, this component from Vaadin and use it in Jmix application right away. Because again, we do not wrap Vaadin components anymore like we did in Classic UI. So
yeah, it's very valuable. It's very valuable.
Yeah. So previously, to use Vaadin component directly, you had to like unwrap, underline Vaadin container from our container to put Vaadin component inside it, style like that. It was like a nightmare, especially if your screen inside GUI module instead of web module, yada yada yada.
Okay.
Now we just extend their components. So in fact, you directly use Vaadin components in Jmix Flow, and adding any Vaadin add-on, any Vaadin component, you can use it right away. Of course, if you want XML support and Studio support, you need to write additional code, which we show in our training course. But
once again,
but using Java, just come on.
Yeah, that's great. And there is one more question from my side, from the developer perspective. For example, if I have two options, I found the needed component in JavaScript as a JavaScript library, and I've also detected the one which fits my needs from the Vaadin paid repository. Which one should be easier to implement in my project? Purchase the one from Vaadin store, or get the one which is free from JavaScript library and implement it into my project? What do you think?
If you have money, it will be easier for you to pay to Vaadin, because they already provide Java API for components. In case of any JavaScript library, you obviously need to implement server-side Java API for it manually from scratch.
And when you get it from Vaadin, you get it out of the box.
Yeah. You get ready to use component, just probably provide Jmix stuff
plugin
like XML support.
Everything. Yeah, that's great. And there was a question from Andre Galik. Is there any recommended alternative to classic grid layout in Flow UI?
If you mean columns, rows, grid layout, any div. I mean,
any div tag.
Any div tag. I mean, I can say that grid layout is popular in Classic UI nowadays, because it was widely used before we implemented field group component to display for editor screens, and then form component in Cuba 7 Plus and Jmix Classic UI. Grid layout just columns, rows with colspan, rowspan. I don't know. You can table tag. It doesn't. It isn't available in the XML, but you can easily create it from scratch
programmatically.
Using Element API, it is really easy. Again, Element API provided by Vaadin is a really powerful feature, because any missing XML tag, you can implement it easily, just even without implementing client side. If it existing HTML tag. And now documentation, there is an example of implementing color fit.
And UI samples also, if I'm
and UI,
yeah,
probably in UI samples. Now documentation how to create color picker missing in the components palette, native HTML color picker using a couple of lines of code, easy as is. And again, going back to a question, probably I don't know several divs or form layout. Again, it has columns, rows, call span, row span, stuff like that.
So let's say this is an alternative. Okay.
Yeah, form layout probably the easiest alternative for you, easiest to use.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you, everyone, for coming, for your questions. And I see one more question regarding reporting. I guess we need to make an extra webinar, an extra workshop on reporting also. Yeah, and I also would like to ask everybody participating in our today's webinar to access our group in the Slack channel. You can see also the link down the video. Please access the group and start discussing things you're interested at, because we've launched this Slack channel especially for the reason to understand what our community is looking for, what features you are interested in, and potentially discuss it for future implementations. And to finalize our today's webinar, I want to ask the last question to Gleb. Once again, I understood that Jmix UI is almost Vaadin Flow. It's it cannot be better, because Vaadin Flow is already a super theme. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
it's better because we have more components. We added entity picker, calendar, Kanban,
we are going ahead. Yeah,
pivot
Kanban.
table.
A little spoiler. Yeah, okay. And my question is, well, from the developer perspective, why still should I choose Jmix instead of using pure Vaadin for my next project?
I would say that Jmix is aimed at creating enterprise applications and providing ready-to-use functionality modules, like from security and audit to reporting and BPM. Which, with the help of Jmix Studio, helps you to focus on the business logic of your application. And when using pure Vaadin, you still will need more time probably to implement UI and implement all these functionalities, because they don't have ready to use modules like we.
Ready-made functionality. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I fully agree with you, Gleb. Thank you for coming today. Thank you, everyone who also participated in our webinar. Please subscribe on our channel, and we'll try to bring you most from the area of how to be productive with Java. Develop smart, not hard. See you next time. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. And always remember, it's great to use Jmix framework today. Cheers.
Definitely.